The People Station, V-103, the ATL's number one for hip-hop and R&B. Frank and Wanda in the morning. And upcoming, there is a very special day, especially here in the city of Atlanta. It is a sad day, but a day that we remember for so many important reasons. It's been 50 years since the death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And in here with us today, Dr. Bernice King, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thank you. And you welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And you know what's
back.
interesting is we're in the studio and we're dressed alike today. I was like, I told you. It's my sister right here.
That's right.
So, let's jump right into it. 50 years. That's almost incomparable. Like, you can't believe it. It's been 50 years.
No, and it's just most of my life. How about that?
But when you think about this. 50 years, and every year when we celebrate the birthday, it seems like it was just yesterday. Yeah. Because all of the things in his teachings we're still using 50 years later.
Yeah, that's because he's a prophet. And so, when we think about we use the word thought leader. My father was really that global thought leader. I mean, he was thinking way ahead. Mm-hmm. And he had an extremely analytical mind, deep critical thinker. Mm-hmm. I'm amazed every time I read his works, mm-hmm. how much insight mm-hmm. he had mm-hmm. in terms of just our humanity and what's needed, mm-hmm. And how he could actually articulate issues that understood challenges all the way around. So mm-hmm. he could speak to our community. At that time, we called the colored or the Negro community. Mm-hmm. But he could also understand the white community mm-hmm. and why they were responding and reacting the way they did. Mm-hmm. And we're missing that kind of leadership today. The ability to, hold the position that you have, right. Forge forth ahead, but yet understand the adversary, the mm-hmm. opponent, the mm-hmm. thing that you're fighting.
You know what I look at it as, and I felt this when we brought the King Papers to Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time I had ever gotten to see how he thought, right? Because if you look at his paper and his work, you see his thoughts, right?
Yes, you do.
So on every page of a book, he's writing notes. On the side of newspapers, he's writing notes. He's always writing notes. Mm-hmm. But even more interesting, he's always reading other people's stuff.
Yes.
And I think a lot of our leaders today, they've gotten to the point where they've gotten that leadership position and they stop learning.
Yes.
They're stuck where they are.
He was a constant student.
Yes,
he was. And he was a seeker of truth.
Right.
He had his foundation, his Christian foundation, but he had an incredible ability to read even things that he didn't holistically agree with, but he could extract, mm-hmm. we call it threads of truth from different mm-hmm. places. Mm-hmm. It's the Hegelian method where he could take the thesis and the antithesis, and he could synthesize stuff.
Right.
And that's how he came up with his nonviolent philosophy. I mean, if I had to say anything, he was a great synthesizer of thoughts and a great, he's fighting for integration. He was able to integrate a lot of different thoughts into something that made sense. That, like you said, we still use.
When he talked, he not only talked in a position of trying to teach you something and tell you something, but also in a position that wowed you to the point, I think my favorite speech is when he talked about going through history. And he says, I wouldn't stop there.
Right.
I'd go to this time, but I wouldn't stop there.
That's his last speech.
That was his last one?
Yeah,
but I wouldn't stop there. I'd go to this time.
Right.
And I'd go to this time. And I'm like, okay, he's a historian. He knows his stuff. That is like the coolest thing.
And he had a photographic memory. He was not reading the script when he did that. Yes, he literally could read whatever he prepared.
Okay.
And not look at it. And if you looked at what he prepared, you will see exactly.
Really?
You will see the exact words.
Wow.
Yeah. He had a photographic memory.
So we're going to be celebrating this 50. And we're using the 50 theme. And there's so many things happening that are going to be beginning, of course, on April 4th. Mm-hmm. At the King Center and the Yolanda King Theater for the Performing Arts. It's going to be an event there. Like, you want to tell us all the things that are happening?
The whole theme is MLK 54. We want people to think, instead of the question, where do we go from here, which they're asking in Memphis.
Okay.
We're kind of like answering it because after you leave Memphis, where you were assassinated, Coretta Scott King establishes the King Center. So MLK forward, together we win with love for humanity. That's where we have to go. Daddy talked about inheriting a world house, and we must learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or together we'll be forced to perish as fools. And so we began our day here in Atlanta with an event that really highlights who he was. He was a nonviolent warrior. And so we're having the Martin Luther King Jr. Peace Prize. So although we lost him on this day, we want people to remember that's what he championed. That's what he represented. And we're awarding the last living prosecutor of the Nuremberg Nazi trials. He is 99 years old.
Seriously?
Yes, and he's still very sharp, and he's traveling. He was somewhere in Europe recently. And he said, if the Lord allows, I will be there. And so he's coming to receive the MLK Peace Prize. Brian Stevenson of the Equal Justice Initiative out of Montgomery, Alabama, where the movement started, who's an attorney. Both of these are attorneys. Brian Stevenson, you may know this, helped to argue before the Supreme Court removing mandatory sentences for juvenile delinquents. Okay. Life sentences that were just, horrible. And he's fought for a lot of discrepancies in the sentencing, but he is opening a museum and a memorial. A museum looking at from slavery to mass incarceration, those connections, and a memorial, a lynching memorial.
A lynching memorial? A
lynching memorial.
Why a lynching memorial?
Because people need to know about that history, what happened. And the way they built it is incredible. And so we're going to honor him for his work, too. And when you think about lawyers, Daddy said true peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. So peace and justice go right together. So we're honoring these men who represent that arena. And then that evening at 6:01 p.m. Central is the time my father was assassinated, which is 7:01 here in Atlanta. We're asking people to ring a bell or bells 39 times. The National Cathedral is going to ring theirs 39 times, and I'm hoping that the Pope will ring from the Vatican. I made that request of him when I was there with him. But 39 times, the King family will be at the King Center. We will ring the bell 39 times, and then we will lay a wreath at my parents' crib, because my parents are side by side. And that's April 4th. I'll be honored that night by SCLC Women, Drum Major for Justice. And then the next day, we're looking at the triple evils he talked about. Yes. So on April 5th and 6th, we're doing this Beloved Community Talks, focused on racism, poverty, and militarism, and how they're all intertwined and interconnected. And Marion Wright Edelman is actually coming as the keynote speaker around the issue of poverty. We had somebody speaking to racism and militarism. And so that's starting on the 5th, the night of the 5th at 6 o'clock. Excuse me, at 5:30. And we go to the 6th, that Friday, all day in the Beloved Community Talk. And, we're asking people to register at MLK50forward.org. Saturday, the kids, if you have children under 15, my niece, Yolanda Renee King, some of you saw it, March for Our Life.
Yes, I'm ready for her. For her.
She's hosting an event with her cousin, who's the great-granddaughter of A.D. King, my father's brother. And they're hosting literally kids who are doing phenomenal things as kids in this earth. The Little Miss Flint, the young girl who's been going around championing the issue with the lead and water in Flint, she's going to be here. And she's, I think she's only 11. And so many other little kids, because we want to just keep encouraging these young kids to know you can make a difference as a child.
And they are.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
And we didn't want to leave them out because it's really about them. And then Monday is the culmination. The reason we went till Monday is because that's the day my father was funeralized. And so we're going to retrace part of the steps we took that day 50 years ago from Ebenezer Church. And this time we're going down to the MLK statue at the Georgia State Capitol. And it's called a March for Humanity at noon. And we will leave there, and then we'll go down to that MLK statue. That wasn't there 50 years ago. That's a tremendous, especially at our capital,
in
the
Georgia.
Georgia
Yes,
state
big time.
capital.
Yeah.
If you go inside, it's another story.
Yeah, amen for that.
So that's progress. But
Okay.
March for Humanity, and then we have a Love for Humanity tribute. The wonderful thing about this tribute that I want people to know, we're going to make a recommitment to our humanity.
Okay.
Because we're losing a sense of that. And I have invited those in my generation that are offspring of some of the civil rights leaders to come and lead a pledge with me and my brother Martin, Malcolm X offspring, Medgar Evers offspring. We're still trying to reach Santita Jackson, but Ralph Abernathy offspring, Andrew Young offspring, the lawyer Attorney Gray's offspring. And we're still trying to reach C.T. Vivian's offspring. So it's going to be a host of us there leading that pledge and have a group of millennials, too, as a part of that pledge. And then the audience that we're making a pledge back to our humanity. And then we're going to have a special thing around guns. Hoping that some of the kids from Parkland will be here, Chicago. And we're going to open up, though, with us from the 60s. Medgar, well, we'll start... Still trying to get the Kennedys, starting with hopefully John Kennedy, if not Caroline, maybe one of her kids. Then the next would be Malcolm's offspring, and then Medgar in the order that the assassinations took place, because these were all really assassinations. And ending with Robert Kennedy offspring, and then we'll do our piece, and then there'll be a short video, and then these kids. But it's going to be an incredible day. And, of course, we'll have music and...
You've been busy.
Messaging.
You've been busy.
Yes, I've been very busy. And I'm going to Memphis.
Before
all this starts, I'm going to Memphis with a group of pastors I've been working here in the city with, black and white pastors around race and racial reconciliation. They've been in small groups just dealing. And we started last April 4th, and we said we're going to go to Memphis around this time period. And so we're leaving, and thank God for Delta Airlines. They've provided us with a charter. We're going to leave here on the 2nd. We're going to Memphis. We're going to visit the museum. We're going to have some dialogue after that. And then we're participating in some of the activities that are taking place on the 3rd with the National Civil Rights Museum, which is formerly the Lorraine Motel, where my father was killed. And that night, there's a special televised event that the Church of God in Christ and ASME is putting on. And me and my brother Martin will be speaking there for that event. And so that was the Mason Temple, the place where my father last spoke. I will have an opportunity, along with my brother, to speak from that same pulpit on April 3rd, 50 years later.
All right, everybody. Wow. MLK 50 forward.
50. Make sure they know 50 forward.
MLK50forward.org. Make sure you get all the events there, and at the King Center on social media. Bernice King, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Everything.
All right, and I got your back.
All right. I know you do.
You got my help. Don't worry about it.
I got
I'm in
yours
there.
too. Okay.
The People's Station, V-103, the ATL's #1 for hip-hop and R&B.